Hi, welcome and welcome back. My name is Eleanor, and I'm going to try to do this as fast as I can because, first of all, as you can see, I'm away from my library. I'm traveling. I don't have much time, and also I'm super excited about something I want to talk about, and I want to get it off my chest. So let me get right into it. I have been attending two very short classes. They're still ongoing. One on Kafka, one on Emily Dickinson. Um, I had not read Kafka before at all, so it was quite a revelation, lots of fun. Surprisingly, the most exciting thing for me is my discovery that he wrote a lot of aphorisms, and the aphorisms are really interesting. Some of them are more like fables, but you can get a book of Kafka's aphorisms. Why aren't more people talking about this? It's really good. Now, one of his most famous aphorisms, I'm going to check my notes now, is a cage went in search of a bird, which is great fun. So I am in this class and we start close reading a few of these aphorisms. And we're close reading them almost as if we're a religious sect and we are studying a holy text. And I start to get the giggles because it's ridiculous. It's Kafka's self-help in a tiny parable form. And I mean, Kafka's just a man. He's just a person. So I'm thinking about that. And then I'm in the Emily Dickinson class. And I remember what I said in one of the previous videos about how she's not my most favorite poet, and sort of tongue-in-cheek I said that she's a bit of a know-it-all. She likes to tell you what to think. And it was interesting because one of the discussions in class was about how Dickinson likes to make assertions. I thought that was just such a great way to put it. She really does like to make assertions. And I thought, well, what's the difference between an assertion and an aphorism? And it's not much. So I thought, I wonder if anyone else is thinking this. So, of course, you know me, I go to the internet and I search. I think my search words were Dickinson, Kafka, aphorisms, poetry. And I come up with this article, which is it's like it was written for me. So the article is by, of course, I'm leaving all the links to everything below, rest assured. The article can be found on the site of the Academy of American Poets. It's written by Sharon Dolin from back in 2011. God bless you, Sharon Dolin. You made my day. She basically talks about exactly what I was thinking about, but of course she's done all the research for me. So a lot of what I'm going to say now is quoting, and I will make sure to say that every time because these are not my thoughts. I originally had some thoughts, but it's her work that has brought so much substance to my reading of these aphorisms. And the first thing she mentions are Kafka's aphorisms. And she talks about Geary's Guide to the World's Greatest Aphorists, a book. And she mentions that guide defines the first stanza of Emily Dickinson's poem, Tell All the Truth But Tell It Slant, as an aphorism. And here I am reading it going, yes, I'm like fist pumping the air. Because, yes, tell all the truth, but tell it slant. There's Emily Dickinson making her assertions. And here we are. And just as we are reading Kafka's aphorisms and we're reading Emily Dickinson's aphorisms, or whatever you want to call them, assertions, we are almost immediately pacified and nodding our heads because they come to us from a literary tradition where we think Kafka, Dickinson, they're so knowledgeable, they're so great, they're literary giants. And that's what makes me laugh because that's absolutely ridiculous. Now, then I'm thinking a lot about what is it that makes a poem have this power of the aphorism. And of course, I just last week was introduced to Auden, and I talked about it in my video, and I immediately thought of the poem. Where is it? So I was immediately thinking of the poem, The More Loving One. And I thought, oh, okay, yes, that sounds like he's making an assertion in a kind of Emily Dickinson way. And I thought to myself, who is making assertions like that nowadays? And I came up with Rupi Kaur. Rupi Kaur is really, at least 50%, if not more, of her work is basically aphorisms with line breaks. I don't say that in any critical way. It is by definition made up of aphorisms. So I just looked her up and looked through some of her work, and I found one of her very short poems, and it reads, again, links everywhere below. You were so distant, I forgot you were there at all. You were so distant, I forgot you were there at all. So then, I'm just going to go because I don't have my usual setup here. So then I go to The More Loving One, and I read, Admirer as I think I am of stars that do not give a damn, I cannot now I see them say I missed one terribly all day. Now, I know, don't come for me. I'm not saying that they're the same poem, but the particular assertion, the, for want of a better word, aphorism perhaps, is the same. So then I'm thinking, okay, well, what about Kafka? Now, Kafka has an interesting aphorism that's on the second page of the Sharon Dolin article. And this is it. It isn't necessary that you leave home. Sit at your desk and listen. Don't even listen, just wait. Don't wait, be still and alone. The whole world will offer itself to you to be unmasked. It can do no other. It will writhe before you in ecstasy. Now that aphorism is, as it's shown in the article, has line breaks. And now it's really not groundbreaking. Any self-help book will tell you this stuff. But you come across it in a Kafka book of aphorisms and you're like, oh, holy Kafka, okay. So I thought, I wonder if Rupi Kaur is saying something similar. So I looked it up and lo and behold, I found that she has a 5-line poem and it reads such: you must want to spend the rest of your life with yourself first. Now, it's not as detailed as Kafka, but I don't think there's really that much of a difference. Okay, so now I'm getting really excited because I have spent years trying to understand the attraction of Rupi Kaur, especially to young women. And when I say understand, I mean truly get it. One of my main goals with my life in poetry is to not be cynical, not be sarcastic, not be snarky, and never ever point a finger and say that's not poetry or that's bad poetry. I'm just not into that's not into it. It's not my gig. If I'm going to be a happy person, I need to understand, why do all these people love Rupi Kaur? So now I'm thinking, I think I get it. So is it possible that Emily Dickinson and her aphorisms and assertions are somehow distilled into a more literal text by Rupi Kaur? I don't mean that she's actually doing it, but it just so happens. So I started looking and comparing Rupi Kaur poems to Emily Dickinson poems, and there's There are so many similarities. And you see what I mean? I get it now. I get it now. Emily Dickinson, well, she has a lot of poems, so let me just say, many, or at least some, a large number, enough to matter, of Emily Dickinson's poems have been referred to by critics as her little girl poems, where she presents herself as a girl. She's very small, she can't do very much, she's had traumatic experience, she's a survivor. It's sounding familiar, right, to Rupi Kaur fans? Of course it is. Now, Emily Dickinson is writing in a different age, and she's writing without social media. She's writing without the social engagement of today's young women. She also has a set, there's no doubt. I'm not going to say Emily Dickinson is not one of the best poets, but she has a set of gifts that she uses with meter, rhyme, metaphor that deepen everything she says. But she's also writing in riddles. And the riddles, once you find solutions for them, do sometimes sound like Rupi Kaur. So I'll give you examples. And now when I say solutions, I know that everyone will say poems are not riddles to be solved. And I agree, but that doesn't mean that that doesn't mean that there aren't poems that are riddles to be solved. And also that doesn't mean that that there's only one solution to the riddle of a poem. No one can tell me that part of the attraction of poetry is not finding the answer to a riddle. That's the fun of it, isn't it? What does the poet mean? That's the fun of it. So let me give you some examples. Okay, so here is Emily Dickinson from my little book of Emily Dickinson that I'm using for my class. I'll have the link so you can read along. They shut me up in prose as when a little girl they put me in the closet because they liked me still. Still, could themselves have peeped and seen my brain go round, they might as wise have lodged a bird for treason in the pound. Himself has but to will, and easy as a star, abolish his captivity and laugh. No more have I. It sounds fancy, it sounds difficult. But if you read it, go down to the link and read it. It's not that difficult. So what's happening here? Well, let's read a Rupi Kaur poem and see if it can shed light. Okay, let me find it because I need to find my... Oh, great, and I have a message. Okay. Sorry, I'm traveling and it's a bit crazy. Okay. So the Rupi Kaur one goes like this. You tell me to quiet down because my opinions make me less beautiful. But I was not made with a fire in my belly so I could be put out. I was not made with the lightness on my tongue so I could be easy to swallow. I was made heavy, half blade and half silk, difficult to forget and not easy for the mind to follow. You see, so many similarities. Now, of course, these are just a few examples, but it's exciting for me specifically because it allows me to understand the world of poetry better. To understand the world of poetry better, I have to understand all the world of poetry. Well, I know that's extreme, but this is my personality. And I've always wanted to understand Rupi Kaur and what she's about. Now, also, I should point out what Emily Dickinson is doing here at the beginning. They shut me up in prose. It's very interesting because she's pointing, of course, to the fact that her power is in poetry. And I think that is something that Rupi Kaur does a lot, is point to the power of poetry as her superpower. And her readers are also given that power through reading her poetry. I'll do one more. And well, let me read it first before explaining. So again, from my book, page 78, Emily Dickinson. Read along with the link if you like. I mean, I don't want to make an assertion that you must, but I recommend it. There is a pain so utter, it swallows substance up, then covers the abyss with trance, so memory can step around, across, upon it, as one within a swoon goes safely where an open eye would drop him bone by bone. She's talking about pain, she's talking about a trauma, the memory of the trauma, and how you can physically, emotionally get past that. Rupi Kaur. Now I'm going to go to the middle of the poem. It's a poem that starts, "Rise, said the moon." I'll read the whole thing. "Rise, said the moon, and the new day came." Be back. Okay, I'm back. Now, where was I? Now, before I read this, I just rest assured, I'm not comparing the talent of Rupi Kaur compared to Emily Dickinson. I'm comparing the content, the themes, and the way it's presented. Okay. "Rise, said the moon, and the new day came. The show must go on, said the sun. Life does not stop for anybody. It drags you by the legs, whether you want to move forward or not. That is the gift. Life will force you to forget how you long for them. Your skin will shed till there is not a single part of you left they've touched. Your eyes, finally just your eyes, not the eyes which held them. You will make it to the end of what is only the beginning. Go on, open the door to the rest of it." There's a trauma in the history. It's a young woman talking in both. There's a sense of empowerment, a sharing with the imaginary reader, and a mention of the idea of memory and forgetting and the possibilities of recovery. So yeah, I'm hoping that you'll find this as interesting as I do. I am utterly intrigued by this idea. I should say that I have been thinking about aphorisms for years, well, on the back burner, so to speak, because, and I wish I was in my library now because I pick up the book. I know exactly where it is on my shelves. It's a small book by Sarah Manguso called 300 Arguments. And I talked about it in one of my much earlier videos. And it's basically a book of her aphorisms. And Sarah Manguso is very interesting. I find her to be a fascinating writer. And at the time, I remember one reviewer called them poems, and I was really taken aback by it. And now, finally, years later, I can sort of see where aphorisms and poems intersect. And that's very exciting. And thank you to the writer of this article, Sharon Dolin, for seeing that too and writing it and putting it online. Lastly, I want to, if I have time, I want to quickly recommend that you pop by a fellow booktuber who I just discovered about a week ago called Poetry Crone. Now, she's taking a break at the moment for just for a short while, but that gives us a chance to kind of go back and look at her previous videos. And she is all about poetry. That's all she talks about. She's a very knowledgeable, very interesting poetry lover. And I will link to one specific video I really liked about Carl Phillips. Now, it's interesting because I'm recommending her not only because I enjoy her, but also because I have a certain sensibility, which is not everyone's cup of tea. Granted, no big deal. She has a very different sensibility. She has, her personality is different, and her poetry preferences are very different to mine. I find that extraordinarily refreshing. It brings fresh air. It's like opening a window and bringing fresh air into my world of poetry, looking at the poems that, you know, she likes, her favorites. And this Carl Phillips video was especially invigorating for me because she discussed his work in a very similar way. She described his work in a very similar way to the way I did. And I have an old video from a couple of years back that I did on a Carl Phillips book. And so I think we agree on what sort of poetry it is. But while I really love a lot of those elements, she really dislikes them. And the way she describes why she dislikes them is so utterly sublime. I'll give you a little sneak preview. Consider this a trailer to the video. So she talks about his equivocation. And now the fact that we've been talking about making assertions in poetry, well, I have anyway. The fact that I have been talking about assertions and aphorisms, it makes me think now of how she talks about equivocation. And that's something that Carl Phillips does all the time. She says the equivocation starts to feel formulaic, just as I would say the aphorisms start to feel formulaic in, let's say, Emily Dickinson or Rupi Kaur, for example. And she said it drove her crazy. And now I loved it. And it drove her crazy. She said it made her want to edit and rewrite his poems. And I thought, that was such a wonderful way to put it. And I can totally get what she's saying. And it made me, as you can see, it makes me smile. It makes me so happy because there is an aspect to reading Philip's equivocation that makes you a bit crazy. And she has a horse riding metaphor. I'm not going to say what it is. Go and watch the video and listen to her horse riding metaphor. Now, she starts with reading. Many of her videos are simply reading poems, but she has the most beautiful voice. And it's a very calming way to enter a world of poetry. Sometimes mine feels quite frenetic. So give it a go. And I'll also link to that particular timestamp where she starts to actually talk about the poems. Okay, so I have to rush off, but yeah, it's been a really interesting week. I look forward to the next one. I wish you all the best. And don't forget that the only real property is the property of the mind. Bye.